January 27th, 2020, at 6:07. Roll call, please.
Dick Anderson.
Here.
Judy Casper.
Here.
Deanna Hinton.
Here.
Riley Hoagland.
Here.
Diane Coos.
Here.
Rick Mark.
Here.
And Mitch Parsons.
Here.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for your patience tonight. We're moving right along. It must be the rain that's affecting us. So we have on the agenda tonight a consent agenda. We have minutes of the regular meeting December 9th, 2019. And that's it on the consent agenda. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, make
Yes.
a motion to approve consent agenda.
We have a second.
Second.
We have a motion with a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm looking for, there was a reference in the discussion of the purchase of the property for Helping Hands that, darn, I'm sorry, I should have picked this out. It said something to the effect in the minutes that the city would own the building only briefly, and then it would turn over to Helping Hands, but it didn't include the sort of caveat that the qualification that the property could revert to the city if the Helping Hands didn't use the property the way it was intended. It was just a, and I'm sorry, I'm looking for the actual line in the minutes. I think it was in the December 9 meeting.
Yeah. So could we have the city attorney review that to make sure it's,
I'd want to just reflect what was said as opposed to inserting.
right?
Obviously, there's other places in the record where it's made clear there's a fee simple determinable condition on using the property, but I can review that and we'll add it if it was said.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. We have a motion with a second then to approve with, minor edification review by the attorney on that section. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed with a nay. Hearing none. Now would be the time for public comments. So we're checking to see if anybody has any. Let me read Article 1, Section 8 of the Oregon Constitution provides, no law shall be passed restraining the free expression of opinion or restricting the right to speak, write, or print freely on any subject whatever, but every person shall be responsible for the abuse of this right. Be advised, statements and comments by citizens under comments from citizens present or on public hearing or public comment items are solely the opinions and statements of the speakers and are not the statements of the city of Lincoln City and do not represent the opinions of the city, its officers, and employees. With that...
So this is for the public hearing.
Okay. Thank you. So does anybody want to speak that isn't part of the public hearing topic? So please come forward, or
Hi again, guys. Some of you I know, some of you I don't. It's good to meet you all. My name is Randy Millette, and I'm here to learn and make a comment about the transitional housing that's happening. So my concerns are some of what I've seen in the community, but I've looked into the company a little bit. They hold roughly $1.9 billion in assets. Okay, it's not a poor company. They do what they're doing here across the country. Last year, Seattle spent roughly $1 billion on their homeless situation, doing exactly what this type of thing, and it didn't do much. So I want to help. I should preface that with, I think it's a stain on us as people and a society to leave people in suffering. Okay, I want to make that very clear. However, I'm very concerned for the city. The city's been good to me. I hope I've been good to the city in return. I worry about the people that this will affect. I've read study after study that shows the negative impacts in the immediate surrounding areas, so we shouldn't pretend they don't exist. They do. My concern is more that I'm worried about the city here. A gift of $400,000 worth of property on 101 when the city owns a whole bunch of property we can't sell for profit that's already plumbed and electrified, all ready to go. Now, I have to assume if you guys are all in line with the project that it wouldn't be much to do a variance and make the project go forward in any other location. As well, the money we spent, we're going to tear down a building and then put up a new building to fit their needs. Is that, I'm understanding correctly? That doesn't make much sense. We could buy a much bigger lot somewhere else outside of the city or in the city, but not on 101. I have concerns. I had to beg the city for approval to open my business. I feel like I've helped a lot of people. I look into this company and I see problems. Again, what skin do they have in the game? They go from city to city, municipality to municipality, and they tug on our heartstrings, and they want, because we all want to do something to help. That's human nature for good people. I'm worried this isn't the right way. I think the city could do better by themselves. We could do something innovative, not follow a failed path we see all across the country. I'd like to do something, but I'm very concerned that this isn't the right way. So, and going forward with follow-up questions, I know you don't answer, but I'll just pose these. What follow-up do we have for the people? When they leave, I've lived here a very long time. For many of those years, I was very poor. I know the struggle personally here in this town. I worked in restaurants most of my life. If you're familiar, you know the game. You're going to starve in the winter, so save in the summer. Now, that's a good paying job here. So, we have a lot of people already fighting for those same jobs. There's a lot of competition. I'm wondering what the city has done to court any industry for our area. What have we done to bring new businesses in that will have year-round, good-paying, family wage jobs? Absent that, absent the, I don't know of any other housing developments that are going up that are going to be affordable to accommodate. I'm very worried for the people you're trying to help. See, they've already been beaten up quite a bit in life, right? They've already failed. They've already tasted that. We're going to set them up, give them a time limit, and expect them to improve their life. This is a tall order for any of us, and they're already broken people. We have to fix that to move forward. Without housing, without opportunities for employment, I fear that we're setting the very people up for failure that we're trying to help. And I caution you guys, and I'm very curious, without the, I can put it in terms of plants. A lot of people think you put a plant under a light, it's going to grow. That's not the case. It needs a complete environment. So if we were to look at the shelter as a grow house, right? What else are we putting in the environment to help these people grow, to overcome? And when the time limit's up, where do they go? What do they do? Because if they break a second time, if they fail after this, there's nothing. We're going to put them into a spiral of despair and pain and suffering. I'd hate to see it put on anybody. So the intention to help is great. I just would urge you guys to slow down, really consider both the company, their outcome and results, our area, how it's going to affect. I have to assume you've done most of this, probably the assets you guys all knew, right? And $1.9 billion this company has. And I'm wondering what they're risking here. What are they putting in? Because it's not a poor company. As you know, I started with nothing. I had no loans, no gifts, no nothing, and that's fine. I get it's a different, I understand. What I'm saying is it's a private entity. their CEO makes a pretty good wage. It's not obscene like the Starbucks guy, but it's a decent wage. I'd like to help the right way. So,
Thank you, Randy, for coming forward. Mr. Chandler, could you, off the top of your head, because I can't remember the dates and times, could you share with us the open house, townhouse meeting regarding this?
We will, yes, sir. We have an open house scheduled for Thursday, this Thursday, which is the 30th, at 5:30, to go from 5:30 to 7 p.m., to allow people to come and meet the representatives of Helping Hands and learn about their organization a little bit better. They will be here, again, from 5:30 to 7 here in this room.
So for those who are interested in the public at large, Thursday of this week at 5:30, come to the chambers, and Helping Hands will be here to offer up a more in-depth explanation of what they do and how they do it and their history.
It will be both a presentation and open to just questions.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and this is the best way to, get it cleared up. So, thank you. Anyone else have something they want to bring up? If not, we'll then move on to public hearings. We have 3 public hearings this evening. Our first one is a public hearing, comprehensive plan amendment and zone change. Call to order the public hearing. It is now 6:19 p.m. The hearing is now open to accept public comment on file ZOA 2019-14 ADU cleanup. Sorry. Try another one. I'll start over. It is now 6:19 p.m. The public hearing for file CPA and ZC 2019-04 is now open. The public hearing concerns a request to amend the comprehensive plan map and zoning map to change the property address as 2126 Northeast Key Place to a comprehensive plan designation of general commercial district GC and zoning of general commercial GC. The site contains one structure. The applicant is John Sutton, and the property owner is Catherine Sutton. This is file CPA and ZC 2019-04. The council must take a few moments to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. Does any member of the council wish to declare ex parte contact, conflict of interest, or bias in this matter?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I need you to disclose that I did read an article in the News Times about this property. I do
Okay,
not feel it influenced me in any way.
It did not. You're open-minded?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The substance of the article was, will be placed into the record, because I knew that this had happened. So anybody that wishes to rebut the substance of the article, which is basically talking about the personal circumstances of the applicant, can rebut those. And if they'd like to take a look at the article, we'll be happy to show anybody that. But you would normally rebut this during the normal time during your presentation, so.
Okay. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the qualifications of a counselor to participate in this matter? Seeing and hearing none. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the council to consider this matter? Seeing and hearing none. The following statements are required to be made at the commencement of the hearing pursuant to City Code and ORS 197.7635. Staff shall now read a list of the applicable substantive criteria for this decision.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. The applicable substantive criteria is that the amendment must be in conformance with the Oregon statewide planning goals, the Lincoln City Comprehensive Plan, and the applicable provisions of Lincoln City Municipal Code Title 17.
Thank you. I point out that all testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the applicable substantive criteria previously listed or such other criteria in the plan or land use regulations which the person believes applies to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the LUBA, the Land Use Board of Appeals, on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the decision maker to respond to the issue precludes any action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the end of this hearing, any person who participated may request a continuance to provide additional testimony, argument, or evidence, or request that the record be left open to submit additional written testimony, argument, or evidence. Before the staff presents a report, I would like to summarize the public hearing procedures which have been adopted by City Council. A summary of the public hearing procedures is on the table by the entrance to the council chambers. Generally, the order of proceedings will be as follows: preliminary matters and required statements, staff report, questions of staff, applicant's presentation, those in favor of the application, those neutral, those opposed, testimony from public agencies, rebuttal by applicant, requests of constituencies or to leave the record open, or continuances or to leave the record open, close of the hearing, close of the record, request to submit written argument, deliberations, and decision. The city has established some time limits. The applicant will have 15 minutes and may reserve up to 5 minutes of that time for rebuttal. After the applicant testifies, any person may speak for up to 3 minutes. If the council has questions, your time responding to any questions will not be counted in your time limit. If you wish to speak, please print your name and mailing address clearly on the sign-up sheet on the table at the entrance. Please speak directly in the microphone and begin by stating your name. If you also have written testimony to submit into the record, please provide a copy to the clerk. Please present the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. For the record, my name is Anne Marie Skinner with the Planning and Community Development Department. As stated by the mayor, this is case file CPA and ZC 2019-04. I will refer you to the screen to go over the next few items. The subject property on the screen, there is an X that represents the subject property, which is addressed as 2126 Northeast Key or Quay Place, depending upon your preferred pronunciation. It sits on the east side of Key or Quay, approximately 230 feet north of Northeast 21st Street. The current comprehensive plan designation and zoning of the site is high-density residential district for the comprehensive plan and multiple family residential for the zoning. The surrounding uses and zones are as follows, and I'll go over these referring to the screen because it's in color, so it makes it easier. Everything that is brown represents the multiple family residential zone, which is the site itself, all of the areas to the north, the south, the east, and then the street is also designated as multiple family residential zone. Across the street to the west is green, and that represents park, and that is used as the Lincoln City Community Center. 21st Street is split in half with multiple family residential on the north half of 21st and R1 residential zoning on the south half. There is some commercial zone, which is the red, and that is at the very north end of the block of which the subject property sits on, at Northeast 22nd Street and Northeast Quay or Key. Those two lots are zoned general commercial. The immediately surrounding uses of the subject property, these are residential, these are all residential, this is a church, these are residential. The application for the request was received in the Planning Community Development Department on October 21st, 2019. It was deemed complete on November 4th, 2019. Notice of the public hearings was mailed to property owners within 250 feet of the site on November 26th, 2019, and notice of the public hearing was published in the News Guard on December 4th, 2019. By way of background, the site contains one existing structure and mature landscaping. Records from the Lincoln County Assessor's Office indicate that structure was built in 1962. The applicant states the site was previously owned by an attorney named William A. Pusey, who constructed the building and used it as his law office. The applicant further states that he used this building as his law office until his death, and his estate was dismantled on February 22nd, 2018. Under the site's current zoning of RM, or multiple family residential, office use is not permitted, either outright or conditionally. The use as a law office began prior to the RM zoning designation. Once the property was zoned RM, or multiple family residential, the office use was allowed to continue as a non-conforming use. Pursuant to the Lincoln City Municipal Code, Section 17.64.030, a lawful non-conforming use of land may continue as long as it remains otherwise lawful, provided the non-conforming use does not cease for any reason for a period of more than 6 months. Use of the site as a law office ceased more than 6 months prior to the date of the application, specifically February 22nd, 2018. Therefore, the non-conforming status ceased. The site may be used as one of the permitted or conditional uses in the multiple family residential zone, but to use the site as an office or any other commercial use, a successful zone change is required. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this matter on December 17th, 2019. At the close of the public hearing, after deliberations, the Planning Commission voted to recommend denial of the request with a 4-2 vote in favor of denial. The recommendation for denial was based upon the following factors. A comprehensive plan and zoning map amendment must be consistent and compatible with other unamended portions of the comprehensive plan per the Lincoln City Comprehensive Plan. The subject property is currently multiple family residential. The sites immediately adjacent to and surrounding the subject property to the north, south, and east are all multiple family residential. Placement of one site zoned general commercial in the midst of surrounding properties zoned multiple family residential is not consistent or compatible with the surrounding multiple family residentially zoned properties. Number 2, adjacent residential uses to the north, south, and east of the site. Rezoning the site to general commercial zoning disturbs the existing residential nature of the adjacent residences and violates the purpose of the multiple family residential zone, which is to provide an environment suitable for higher density urban residential uses and community services. The zone change request is not consistent with the purpose statement of the RM zone, of which the surrounding properties are zoned. The two commissioners who voted in opposition of the recommendation for denial based their vote upon the fact that the general surrounding area is a mixed-use area with a church farther north and the community center across the street to the west, concluding that the proposal is consistent with the mixed-use surroundings. The city's comprehensive plan provides for major and minor revisions. Major revisions are changes to the comprehensive plan and zoning map that either have widespread and significant impact upon the immediate area of the change or a qualitative change in the character of the land use itself. Staff considers this a major revision since the requested change from multiple family residential to general commercial zoning would produce a qualitative change in the character of the land use itself. Accordingly, the proposed amendment must conform to the statewide planning goals and be consistent and compatible with other unamended portions of the comprehensive plan. The City Council needs to be aware that the applicant's statements regarding the intended use are not binding without a development agreement. Accordingly, if rezoned, the owner may use the property for any use the general commercial zone permits. The list of uses allowed in the general commercial zone are varied. They are listed in the written staff report. There are more than 26, and vacation rental dwellings are also allowed as a permitted use in the general commercial zone. The rest of the staff report gives staff's assessment of the Lincoln City Comprehensive Plan goals and the statewide planning goals. And with that, I am open for questions.
Questions for staff?
I probably have a few here, but one thing I just wanted to point out, I looked this up earlier, was just the pronunciation, and it's key, according to my research, and I can play it for everybody. Now, of course, I turned off my mic, but anyway.
It's all right. We're okay with that.
Anyway, I just wanted to point that out because we...
I'm still saying quick.
It's not appropriate. Anyway, that's okay. Go right ahead. But I just... I had to
All
look
right.
it up. Okay.
The question in there somewhere.
Actually, just a correction. This seems straightforward, but for me it was really difficult going through everything in the packet regarding this. And where I kept getting stuck was that that the person who owned it passed away, and so there's this time lapse, and the time lapse was 6 months. In the ordinance, it says that after 6 months, then it reverts to the correct zoning. And so my question is that time length appropriate? Because I've just recently been involved with 2 deaths and the business following, and one was 2 years, one was over 1. So I'm just questioning that the appropriateness of the length of time and not in the current use. And I know what the ordinance said because that's what you have put in the packet. So I'm stuck there. And also, you mentioned a development agreement. So if this would continue with current use, could that be done through a development agreement?
The statutory development agreement is always a tool that can be used in a zone change application request that would specify the uses or lack thereof.
Because I agree with what you put in the packet, that there's a lot of uses, a long list of uses that wouldn't fit this area. But the current use doesn't not fit, in my opinion, so anyway, I'm just kind of curious how.
Remember, a development agreement still needs to be found consistent with the comprehensive plan. So you still have the same issue even if they narrowed the number of uses.
So, okay.
You all right? Because there, other questions? Yes.
Well, there was, like, goal number 9 on page 19 of our packet, talked about the economic development goal, and it seemed to be a good use that met that goal. It seemed to fit in prior to when the zoning was implemented for residential family. It was okay. And it worked quite well, because if you look around, there's not a high-density building that's going to replace this property, I wouldn't think. And it seems to be a lot of trees and areas around there. And there seems to be commercial property at the north end. So there is some commercial use already in the area. So it looked like perhaps it did meet goal number 9. Where'd it go? Addressing, here it is, to provide adequate opportunities through a variety of economic activities vital to the health and welfare, prosperity of Oregon citizens. So this rezoning would be consistent with goal number 9. Do we know what the building is going to be used for?
Staff found that, staff agrees with your assessment. Staff did find that the comprehensive plan map amendment and zone change is consistent with economic development, as well as being consistent with housing, due to the fact that the general commercial zone would allow the same number of units currently allowed in the multiple family residential zone. The general commercial zone also allows for tiny house development. General commercial zone also allows for mixed use that could accommodate both commercial and residential, as well as multifamily dwellings by conditional use. So for those reasons, staff found that the request is consistent with both the economic development and the housing goals.
And how would parking play into this?
It would be non-conforming for parking.
So it'd be like street public parking, or is there a restriction depending on the use of the building? Do we know what the building will be used for of that list of 26, or is that still pending?
Well, unfortunately, the proposed use doesn't really come into play when looking at the zone request. You have, unless there's a development agreement on the table, which there isn't. So you have to look at all the uses that are allowed in the general commercial zone. In this particular instance, parking requirement would be, the parking would be considered non-conforming.
Because previously the business was a lawyer office.
Correct.
And it was that for decades.
Yes.
And so I guess that's open to subjective decisions, like what that business will evolve into over the years. If we could have, yeah, I mean, could be a go-go dancing place, I don't know. Okay, I was just curious.
Staff would emphasize that the site size is 6,970 square feet. So the use is limited in the size of the site.
But they didn't ask to tear the building down and start over. They
No.
totally redid the building already?
Yes, the building has been completely remodeled.
And they just applied for an application in April, correct? April they applied application, you said October, I'm sorry, October of 20.
Yes, for the zone change, yes.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd just like to ask a follow-up question. If they've totally remodeled the building, what's the use then of the building in this new revitalized form?
I believe the intent of the remodeling was to continue to use it as an office.
Is there a parking lot there?
There is not.
Any parking spaces off the street?
There's street parking. There's on-street parking.
Are there any off-street parking spaces?
The site does not have any off-street parking spaces currently.
Is it consistent or inconsistent to have an isolated zone in the middle of a block? I'm seeming to remember that for zone changing, and as we've looked at other zones, we liked more than one lot. And I think you've tried to explain consistent with the similar zoning. To me, that kind of means attached to and running concurrent, as even looking at your color here. So by doing a line, one block in the middle of one lot in a middle of a block like that would be inconsistent?
Correct. And that was the statement that I read, and I will just refer back to that, that the proposed amendment must be not only consistent with the statewide planning goals, but it also must be consistent and compatible with other unamended portions of the comprehensive plan. And that phrase right there means exactly what Mayor Anderson just stated.
Other questions? All right. Why don't, if you'll allow me, we'll call up the applicant and let the applicant make some presentation. And you have, as they say, 15 minutes. If you, and this is where if you want to reserve part of that for any kind of rebuttal, but
Okay, I'm fine.
give us a.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is John Sutton. I live in Nescoin. My daughter Kat bought this property in March of 2018. In February of 2018, prior to purchase, I came down to the planning office and I asked them what I needed to do or how this building could be utilized, and because it's an old building, and I was worried about upgrading it, the windows, etc., electrical. And she said, as long as you rent this building out to a like-kind business, it's fine. You don't have to upgrade it and do anything. So went ahead and my daughter made the purchase, and it took me about a year to remodel it, just cosmetically. I got it all ready, advertised it, had a great tenant lined up, and so I sent another email to the same planner, and I said, hey, I got this great tenant lined up, and looks like it's above board and legit. And she wrote me back an email that said, well, unfortunately, 6 months has passed for a non-conforming building, so I cannot rent it out at this point, and I basically can't do anything with it. Now, this planner lived right around the corner. She walked by there every day with her dogs twice a day for 10 years, and she knew it was unoccupied, and she told me it'd be great to have somebody in there. So I thought everything was going to be good. This is just going to be some investment money for my daughters for her college. So we tried to go for a zone change and to commercial, because we didn't, to get it upgraded to residential would have to tear up put 2 parking spaces right in the front, tear up all the vegetation in the front, just pretty much gut everything down to the studs and then some. So An alternative was to request a zone change to commercial, which we did. So I'm thinking that if this property reverts back to residential, it's my belief that a lot of the native vegetation and the old growth spruce that's back there, the urban forest, I think would be sacrificed for some multifamily buildings that would be going in there. Right now, it's a really cute place. It's one of the few urban forests right in town. We just wanted to preserve that. And because we really love the building. I mean, Mr. Pusey, he was my grandma's attorney. And one small gray area on this non-conforming. Now, Mr. Pusey died April 25th, 2017. And his estate may have been dissolved in February of 2018, but he was the proprietor of that business, and he passed away a whole year before the house, almost 10 months before the house was even on the market. So it should have been non-conforming before it went on the market. So that would be a question for somebody else, I think. But so this is the only way we could go to try to preserve that building as is. Just wanted to have it as a law office, and just wanted to see if we can preserve that building as is.
So, Mr. Sutton, you heard, with the findings where we have to go down the, try to keep,
Yes.
the rest of the stuff out of it and try to deal with the
Right.
ordinance itself and try to, is there anything specific to the findings as you've gone through those that you have looked at and where staff has it incorrect?
No, but just to maybe dig a little deeper into the non-conforming clause, when it stops, when it commences and when it stopped for the previous owner. And if that lapse was over 6 months before this was purchased, then I don't know if that's something, that's a question probably for an attorney, so.
Yeah. And could you help me, not that it's relevant, but curious, what do you do for a living?
I'm a builder.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So you're familiar
Remodeling.
with this stuff?
Yes.
Okay. Other questions of the applicant, please?
Just have one. So you're requesting a zone change. I'm wondering if you had considered mixed use rather than the commercial?
Yeah, it would still fall under the residential remodel, which would be complete gut, and it would be cost prohibitive.
But that allows for other uses, so
But
that's,
this is
Yeah, I mean,
multifamily
the whole
zone.
thing would have to be leveled to,
So what would
I
be
know.
the difference between commercial and you're still isolating a new zone in the middle of a block?
I know.
Okay. Okay.
okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Are there any other applicants want to speak in favor of the, any other people want to speak in favor of the applicant? Any of those neutral want to speak, or those opposed? Testimony from the public agencies? Not much to rebut. You got lots of time. And then request for continuance or to leave the record open. Is there any,
You're not required to grant a continuance or leave the record open because this is not the initial public hearing, but you can ask.
is there any reason to? Any? Hear none? So I'd entertain a motion then to close the public hearing in the record?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion to close the public record and the hearing with the second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed with the nay? All right. Deliberation.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So we've established that by changing the zone, it would impact that entire Brown area. Is that what we're talking about?
Well, it wouldn't be consistent with your comprehensive plan, is what I heard staff say, that you don't do isolated,
Okay. I mean, that's what it is. It's either all or nothing.
correct,
Okay.
the block or.
Block or nothing.
Or at least a large enough area. Yep.
I would entertain looking at that whole block. I mean, I think there's two churches on that block, and there's a residential, there's a multi-family residential spot. I mean, and it's right across from the community center. I mean, I think there's a way, it's already attaching 22nd Street. I would entertain looking at that and not completely shutting the door.
I just would point out that what's pending before you is this quasi-judicial
Yeah.
application.
So that it just-
All right, thank you.
So then, yeah, if somebody wanted to do that, they could entertain such a motion. Not a motion, but a
I understand.
application. So,
Mayor, I have a question.
okay,
So let's just say we said yes, but they would still be non-conforming in the parking part. Is that correct? I mean, the business still has no on-site parking,
correct. I mean, if
so it would still be not conformed to,
hypothetically, if that was a commercial lot,
yes?
is that what you're saying? Commercial lots that would require parking on site. So that
Okay.
would have to be fixed.
Okay.
Or,
Clear
Yeah.
that, yeah.
So,
Sorry. You don't have to hear from me unless you want to hear from me. So.
okay, so all right, so an example is, I know of a business near me, and there's no private parking, it's all on-street parking. So that must be a non-conforming use as well?
Depending on the general,
It's,
is it GC though? Is
it may not be a
TBC?
non-conforming use. It could be a non-conforming as to parking. It could be, structures are sometimes non-conforming. When it was built, the setback was 5 feet from the property line. 10 years after it was built, we changed the setback to 10 feet. Well, the building is non-conforming. So that's the distinction that we're talking about. So non-conformities can be use, can also be structures and other elements.
Counselor Casper, the parking code also allows for use of, with a joint parking agreement, using another site within 200 feet of the site. So potentially, the applicant could gain approval for parking on another site within 200 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Such as across the street?
Yes.
well, if you recall, we dealt with that request for some other properties, wanted to have set a similar arrangement using the community center parking.
I don't think he was here
Well, I
Oh,
wasn't
we're-
here for that.
We
Oh,
weren't
I'm
here
sorry.
for that.
And
Oh,
for that.
How
That
time
was me who
flies.
was giving land away.
how time flies, sorry. That one didn't go over well.
So I'm sorry, I was
The-
confused by some of the questions earlier. This request is, we can or cannot rezone one lot?
The comprehensive plan states that the proposed amendment must conform to the statewide planning goals and be consistent and compatible with other unamended portions of the comprehensive plan. So if you look at the unamended portions on either side, it's still residential. Used to be called spot zoning, we don't use that term anymore, but basically there's residential and in the middle a spot of commercial, so it's not consistent with the other unamended portions of the comprehensive plan. The applicant has been advised, and was stated at the planning commission meeting, it would have been easier to try to make the case for this change if it had been the whole block. That's not necessarily that would occur. I mean, the council has, with respect to a recent application done, basically said, no, we're not going to let the domino fall on that side of the street. So, and that was referenced at the planning commission meeting. So it's all about, the comprehensive plan is going to have a spot of commercial in the middle of a row of residential. And talking about the building is kind of a red herring, because it's not what's before you. It's the changing the designation of the zone.
So, other questions, discussion, motion?
So we're limited to what? I mean, there is.
Following the ordinance, following the...
I was just going to say, we don't have an option here.
Right. Exactly.
Even if we don't like it.
Well, exactly, and if you don't like it, to your point, as you were raising, though, you come back and fix something, you know, if you don't think a 6-month or, you know, a unused, you know, when something drops away. Huh?
We can't change that retroactively?
No.
And I'm also considering being told one thing but not the full story, or not hearing the whole story in the beginning. You know, the 6 months wasn't heard or wasn't stated, and so.
So, entertain a motion?
I'm looking for it.
Come on.
This is the crappiest motion I have. We gotta get to deny it, I guess. I mean, God, you guys are gonna make me do it.
Not this one.
You gotta, well, if you don't make a motion, then what happens?
The planning,
What happens if no motion is made?
I'm going to make a motion. I was just looking for it.
No. Well, I'm still curious.
Yeah, I want to hear this answer.
Then you're not doing what you're here to do.
You have an application in front of you. You got to do one way or the other motion.
Yeah, I
You
understand.
can't just let it sit, so that would be the
Making
answer.
sure that, you know,
I just want to address the fact that if you come to the planning counter and you ask staff for advice, nothing that staff says is binding. And you know, I can quote the case law. I did it at the planning commission if you reviewed that. But there's absolutely no way you can say it was staff's fault that this individual didn't pay attention to the expiration of nonconformities. The staff, obviously, and the staff member's not here anymore, but staff knows what to tell people at the counter, and mostly we tell people, please look at the code. And, you know, if you're a participant in a local land use proceeding, it's up to you to ascertain for yourself what's necessary to protect your rights.
you got it?
I got it. I'd like to make a motion to deny based upon the evidence and applicable criteria, the request comprehensive plan map and zoning map change for 2126 Northeast K or Coy Place.
Key.
Key, okay. From multifamily RM to general commercial GC with the directive to staff to prepare a final order for the next city council meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to deny. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed with a nay? Hearing none? Thank you.
Abstain.
You don't get to.
Oh.
All right. We have next public hearing. We have a public hearing now. This is it is now 7:01 p.m. The hearing is now open to accept public comment on file ZOA 2019-14 ADU cleanup. This public hearing concerns a city-initiated proposal to amend Title 17 zoning in Chapter 17.08 by revising the definition for accessory dwelling units to be consistent with the state code, revising Section 17.80.110 to provide clear and objective language, removing inconsistencies throughout Title 17 in reference to accessory dwelling units. Councilors, are there any abstentions or disqualifications based on conflict of interest or personal bias? Hearing and seeing none. After the staff presentation, any person may speak for up to 3 minutes. If you have any questions from time responding, will not be counted in your time responding to the questions. If you wish to speak, please print your name and mailing address clearly on the sign-up sheet on the table at the entrance. Please speak directly into the microphone and begin by stating your name only. If you also have written testimony to submit into the record, please provide a copy to the clerk. Staff report.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Anne Marie Skinner. I'm with the Planning and Community Development Department. And this ordinance amendment before you is for what I'm calling an ADU cleanup. ADU stands for Accessory Dwelling Unit. A few months ago in 2019, there was an ordinance amendment before you for accessory dwelling units to conform to House Bill 2001 that was passed by the Oregon State Legislature last year. And that ordinance amendment removed the prohibition, or removed the requirement for owner occupancy of either the principal dwelling or the accessory dwelling unit, and it also removed the requirement for parking for the accessory dwelling unit. And in the process of doing that, when we sent the acknowledgement to DLCD, they pointed out that we missed the definition, and we also missed some subjective language. So this ordinance amendment is simply removing that subjective language, which has to do with design standards for an accessory dwelling unit, which technically should not be required for an accessory dwelling unit, and making the definition consistent throughout each of the zones where it is mentioned, and that is the upshot of the ordinance amendment.
Thank you. Questions? Go ahead.
Sorry, I just have not a question, but a comment. I really am opposed to removing the design review elements because we work so hard on that, and that was like one of the things to get us to the ADU, for everyone to agree to it, and anyway. But if in fact they're giving us no option other than whatever.
So,
It would certainly, the state did not want it to be subjective. So if the council wants to keep some design standards, they need to be clear and objective. Meaning, for instance, single-family dwellings have to have 2 design features. And there's a list from which they can be selected. Dormers, gables, bay windows, eaves by eaves of at least 6 inches, recessed porch entry, and I forget what the other 2 are. So if it's council's desire, it would be easy enough to make the recommendation that the subjective design standards that are in there be removed and be replaced with the list of 2 of the features that are required for a single-family dwelling.
I think what we were doing was to have it look like and kind of mimic the main house. And so it wouldn't be like a whole different thing, but would go with the,
And that is the subjective part.
Looking like the main house is subjective?
According to the state, it is.
We need a good state senator.
yeah, I think, I think so. There's been a couple things this year that haven't suited us well.
It's not clear and objective, and it's kind of a typical land use standard, but it's not clear and objective in the sense that, you know, your setback is 10 feet. So it's the kind of standard that requires interpretation by the planning director, and when you see that exercise of discretion, that's where they're getting excited, and they don't want to see that.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to continue because the city attorney just reminded me about the setbacks.
Okay.
We had setbacks. We worked hard on developing our setbacks for ADUs. And now we don't have setbacks with this new revision? I think we said 15 feet from other buildings. I can't remember exactly the original. I mean, we worked hard on this stuff. This is, and I believe the reason that we gave for the setbacks originally was for fire.
You mean the separation between buildings?
Yes.
There are, building code dictates separation between building.
So who with the memory?
That wouldn't be something that should be in, the separations between buildings should not be in a zoning code. That should be dictated by the building and fire code, which it is. The building
So-
and fire code dictate those separation distances.
So, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
We have to do, I mean, this is state.
Well, it's.
No, we
it's-
don't have to.
Yeah.
No, we don't have to.
Where does that leave us?
Well, how can we?
It leaves us with, it elevates the type of application. So rather than having it be a simple review through building permit, it would elevate it to a site plan design review and would have to go through a meeting. It would have to go through the same process that design review would have to go through. And it would, in staff's opinion, eliminate any accessory dwelling units. The whole point of House Bill 2001 was to make accessory dwelling units more accessible for people as affordable housing. The more complications and the more standards and requirements you put on accessory dwelling units, the less accessible and affordable you make them.
So
How many do we?
by the recommendation or what you're suggesting is to keep it simple? Or,
That is staff's recommendation, but that's certainly not, that council does not have to go along with staff's recommendation.
Another example is the lot size was struck. We struggled with that too. I mean,
And that is keeping it consistent with, again, it goes back to House Bill 2001. Staff's being proactive. Once we reach a population of 10,000, the lot size for single-family dwellings goes away.
aren't that big yet.
census is coming up.
Hopefully they don't do it in the summer.
I mean,
I think that needs to be repealed.
You know, I'm looking for the readout where I thought that we had design standards more than just to conform with the main house, that we had some pitch, not numbers, but I might have been.
No,
I guess
this
not. Okay.
was it.
Okay. But I know that was the whole idea certainly, because we did ADUs long before this House bill came along, and we did it for the purpose of trying to find affordability and increase density for all the right reasons. But at the same time, we were trying to, connect, with the neighborhood, and so you didn't have just a box in the backyard. So my fear is,
It's terrible.
what's to prevent, the Sears shed coming in and, you know, of course, meeting standards, but with no appeal or, and at the same time, I agree, I don't want to make it, you know, the intention was to have these, not to just have it on paper, but to add to affordability. And I guess what I'm not hearing is any middle ground.
Well, what about the design features that are required for single-family dwellings?
I like that idea, if that would give us something to look at and be specific, but if it's going to create another hurdle, and that, if you're saying that wouldn't, it would
No,
just be-
it would not.
Okay.
Well,
You know-
one of the things you could do would be to change okay, so paragraph 7, you're striking all these design things, roofs and facades and color. You could go to that section and just say, like color is the easiest one. The exterior color shall be the same color as the main house.
That's what we have.
That's clear and objective. That's not the interpretation of what color family, which is the problem with the other language. The same thing with the roofs. The roofs of detached accessory dwelling units shall be, it says, similar to the main house. Say, the same as the main house, and it shall include the same architectural embellishments.
Where are you reading that?
Paragraph 7, which is struck, it's the design.
Yeah, it's 7A, B, and C.
Exterior color shall be the same
Yeah, the
colors.
same thing with the facades. We could say the street facade.
Make it the same.
You just take away the discretion, that's what they're saying. It's so you can have a standard, and you can get that match with the main building and not see a Sears shed in the backyard, so.
Exactly. I think that's
That-
what we were doing.
That would be the intent, or at least that. How much work does that take, or
Oh.
to bring back a
None.
a
That's
draft?
very simple.
If you wish to, this is an advertised public hearing, I'd ask if anybody wants to comment, but we could, if you continue this, we could work up some alternative language.
And if I could,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Mayor, if I just want to say that there is heartburn over HB 2001. There are a number of cities throughout Oregon who want to fight this and have it repealed. There's a lawsuit, at least one of them. And so I think we're almost premature trying to fit into this round circle with the square box. There's a lot of hesitation out there. There's some absolute, I'm not going to do it from a couple of cities. So being imposed on the smaller cities of 10,000 population or more was an overreach by a lot of people's thinking, including mine, for this small city to be squoze into that. So,
I guess, those were the kind of the design standards came up. The other is, I was reading zones, all ADUs go into all zones now.
Any zone
is there
that
any-
allows a single-family dwelling
Is now eligible.
has to allow an accessory dwelling in it.
So that would include Road's End.
Yes. That's what the state law proclaims.
Because there was a great deal of discussion on that.
Just to
Yep, go ahead.
piggyback on that, did I hear you say, for clarification, in the beginning, I thought we had to have the property or the homeowner reside on either the residence or the ADU? Is that being eliminated, or
Yeah.
did I hear?
I
Yes,
think we did
that
that
was
previously.
eliminated a few months ago.
Okay, but that was okay?
Mhm.
Okay,
To conform with the state.
okay.
Yeah.
Just checking.
So why don't you just hold that thought, and what we'll do is finish the public hearing, and before we close the hearing or anything, we can give directions or whatever. Is that? Any other questions of staff on this? We kind of beat it up. Our good work went out the window. That's why we don't ban plastic bags ahead of time, see? Just a reminder.
No.
Told you. Go ahead.
I have a comment
Counselor.
about that too, but anyway, I was just.
No doubt.
I was just curious about the, on page 99, Taft Village Core, and that was removed, and then also the Nell Scott plan, so I'm just curious, were they not available for ADUs in the past, or why are they being removed now?
It's not being removed.
Oh, how did I
It's-
read it?
It's just, it's removing that language so that it just says accessory dwelling unit. So that each zone that has accessory dwelling units has the same language. So it's
Oh,
consistent
I
throughout
see.
the entire Title 17.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Thank you. This would be a time for anyone else to provide some comments on this public hearing. Oh, you don't need to. But that was nice of you to do it. Yeah.
That was the invitation.
That was an invitation. I'll sign you in.
My name is Greg Burton, and I spent the last 35 years in a place where almost every neighborhood had ADUs allowed. Most of the zoning of previously single-family neighborhoods at that time allowed for 2 units, usually based on the square footage of the lot. And I can tell you that I think people loved it. There was, if you're in a nice neighborhood with really nice single-family houses, most people are going to build a nice accessory unit to go along with it because they care about their property values. In other neighborhoods where maybe the rents are lower, you may not find the same design standards, but you'll be increasing the rental stock here, which we desperately need. I noticed that when they may not be legal for both units to be rented, but I noticed one of the really nice developments at Otter Rock, I think one of the newer ones down there. Every house comes with a complete apartment over the garage, and if you're living in the house, you can have a complete other apartment. You can use it for guest quarters. You can use it for rental. You can use it for your kids when they finish college. It's a wonderful thing to have, and I think people go through stages of life, and sometimes they may not use it for a rental at all, and sometimes they may live there, and then maybe at another point in their life they may wish to rent it. But I think the most important thing that I found was, by the way, I should mention, I like all the things that you're talking about here with the standards and the definite, the straightforward definitions of how you want them to be aesthetically. But one of the things that I really liked is that it adds diversity to neighborhoods. And from everything that I read, when you add diversity to something, committees make better decisions, companies make better decisions. People function better when they're exposed to other people who are not exactly like them. I really liked the mix of people who could afford to buy someplace that was really expensive, and then they could have somebody living just a few doors down or even on their own property who was maybe at a different point in their life, younger, just starting out, doing something else, having their first child, and I just thought it was great. So I thought I would come up here and tell you my experience, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burton. Appreciate it. We happen to agree with you. So it's been on the books for quite a while, and I think the angst that you hear is simply being told by the state how we need to modify our existing ordinance to conform statewide, rather than letting the city itself and the people Thank you. Anyone else or agencies or anybody want to testify? Hearing none, then I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing, or should we get?
Yeah, if you're going to direct us to return with some alternative language, then I'd recommend you continue the hearing, and we'll just come back, and the continued hearing is handled the same manner as the original hearing. You'll just hear from staff what additional language we've presented, and then ask the public if they have any comment on that. So I would continue the hearing to February 10th at 6 o'clock.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to continue this public hearing and record to February 10th at 6 p.m. in these chambers. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed with a nay? Thank you. And then at that time, what we'd do is see and read the modifications as we've directed.
And I will, because the ordinance is also on this agenda, we'll need to continue the ordinance, or I'll just bring it back. And I'll put the alternative language in so we don't have to read anything specially, so you'll have both versions.
Okay. 210. All right, thank you. All right, we have one more public hearing, and this is open the public hearing. It is now 7:23 p.m. The hearing is now open to accept public comment on file ZOA 2019-16 RCC zone creation. This public hearing concerns a city-initiated proposal to amend Title 17 zoning, Section 17.12.010, classification of zones, adding a new resort recreation commercial zoning district, creating new chapter 17.29 RCC, resort community commercial. Councilors, are there any abstentions or disqualifications based on conflict of interest or personal bias? Hearing and seeing none. After the staff presentation, any person may speak for up to 3 minutes. If we have any questions, your time responding will not be counted in your limit. If you wish to speak, please print your name and mailing address clearly on the sign-up sheet on the table at the entrance. Please speak directly into the microphone and begin by stating your name only. If you also have written testimony to submit into the record, please provide a copy to the clerk. Staff, provide your report.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilors. For the record, my name is Anne Marie Skinner with the Planning and Community Development Department. This case, as has been stated, is ZOA 2019-16, and this is creating a new zone for the city of Lincoln City, and the new zone will be called Resort Community Commercial, or RCC, and this zone is being created specifically to enact the comprehensive plan map designation of recreation resort mixed use. And that designation has been assigned to a portion of property in the northern area of Lincoln City. It's approximately 23 acres. This ordinance simply creates the zone. It is not implementing the zone. And the zone creation itself, for the most part, the uses, the standards are all negotiated through a statutory development agreement. So while there are some proposed uses listed, they can be added or deleted per the statutory development agreement. The setbacks for building, the height, parking, landscaping, density, maximum lot coverage, signs, is all negotiated through the statutory development agreement. And I would welcome any questions.
Questions? Counselor?
I just have a couple. And,
1
on page 54, I was just curious, under the uses permitted, B, the first one, B1, is animal sales, and I just wonder about that. I mean,
Animal sales?
That's what it says. Non-residential, ground floor with residential above. These are permitted uses.
On page 54, that shows the language being, in red is deleted.
Yeah, well, this isn't.
Oh,
deleted.
you're right, this one is not deleted. Animal
No.
sales and services, grooming and retail, is what it says.
So it'd be like a pet store.
Okay. And I just wanted clarification, if I could, on page 55, which is also the permitted uses, same category, way down there on 23. It says sporting goods store, comma, without outdoor storage. And I was just curious, does that mean like if there was a container or something with more? I mean, I wasn't quite sure what that meant, outdoor storage.
For instance, when you go into, say, Hillsborough and you drive by Dick's Sporting Goods stores, and depending upon the season, they will have kayaks sitting outside or camp stoves sitting outside. So that means that you can have the sporting goods store, but you can't have any of the outdoor display of merchandise. It all has to be inside. Unless you negotiate otherwise through the statutory development agreement.
And then this is just another reoccurring question for me. Anyway, under 1729-040, also on page 55A, the maximum building height, that's what that's referring to. And height means the vertical distance from the average of a finished ground level at the center of all walls of the building to the highest point of the roof, exclusive of chimneys. I understand what that means, but I'm taking issue with the finished ground. So you can come in and you can move stuff around, then you can measure from there. And I realize that that's what it is, but I just question it. But anyway, that's it.
I believe that language is taken directly from the city charter.
And the idea of staying in that range, some of the changes made was going with height, saying 45 feet, but it's negotiated. You don't have to be 45 feet. You can negotiate, up to 45 feet. Is that?
That was the idea, is that the language, if you're looking at the language that was stricken, rather than just say the height limit is 45 feet, and then they come in and say, no, my right to build it to 45 feet. No, we said we can negotiate up to 45 feet. And so it's not automatic. Again, this is not a by right zone. You don't get things by right. So that's why there's a lot of reference to, we're going to negotiate that. And there's a parameter, of course. The charter says you can't go above 45 feet. So we stuck that parameter in there so nobody came in and said, I want 65 feet. So that's not going to happen. And
in theory, so negotiating 2 or 3 items, maybe, if the negotiation is 45 feet, but they're giving somewhere else, maybe more landscaping or,
Exactly.
Less parking or something, and that's the thought.
It may be a design standard.
Right.
It may be something staff wants to see, additional landscaping or something like that. But the whole idea is this is a negotiated development agreement. Nobody is entitled to maximum benefits by right on either side. So they come in and say, we'd like 45 feet, and we say we'd like additional landscaping, and then we make that deal. And actually, we don't make it, we bring it to you.
Good. Other questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
On page 56E, I think I understand it. It says landscaping shall generally comply with blah, 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 except that landscaping requirements. Do you need generally in there? Doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that what we're trying to do is point them to what we expect them to be guiding their design. And then if they have something specific they want to ask for a variance for, there's authorization given.
Okay.
So we're not telling them they absolutely strictly have to comply. We're telling them, design your plans based on what this code is. If you got something, you can specifically ask, and we can negotiate to vary it.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay, any other questions of staff? Thank you, Anne Marie. Is there any other comments from the public regarding this ordinance and new zone? Seeing and hearing none. Anybody opposed? Then I'd entertain a motion to close the hearing and the record.
Mr. Mayor, I
Yes.
move to close the hearing in the record.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion to close the hearing and the record with a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed with an A? Hearing none. Thank you. We actually have, next item of business is that ordinance. If we want to move to the ordinance,
Your Honor, Counsel, this is first reading of ordinance 2020-02, an ordinance amending the Lincoln City Municipal Code, Title 17, zoning, Chapter 1712, zoning districts established, Section 1712.010, classification of zones, adding a new resort community commercial zoning district, creating a new chapter, Chapter 1729, RCC, resort community commercial. Ask for approval of first reading, and if it's unanimous, we'll go from there.
Make a motion to approve first reading of ordinance 2020-02.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed with a nay? Hearing none.
Your Honor, Counsel, this is second reading of ordinance 2020-02, an ordinance amending the Lincoln City Municipal Code, Title 17, zoning, Chapter 1712, zoning districts established, Section 1712.010, classification of zones, adding a new resort community commercial zoning district, creating a new chapter, Chapter 1729, RCC, resort community commercial. Ask for approval of second reading and adoption of the ordinance.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
motion to approve second reading and adopt ordinance 2020-02.
Second.
We have a motion with a second.
It's a roll call vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, let's do a roll call vote.
You might want to go back and redo the first reading.
All right, let's do the first reading again for that approval and we have a motion on the table?
I would withdraw the motion for second reading and go
I'll
back.
withdraw.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, so we have a motion on the approval of the first reading by Mr. Parsons, seconded by Casper. Oh, it was Ryan Coons.
Who's
All right.
Roll call on that. Sorry. Seemed like it was moving too
Yes.
fast.
Did I miss something here?
Yeah, if you could just do the roll call.
Hinton,
Yes.
Hoagland,
Yes.
Coos,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Parsons.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
And Casper.
yes?
Motion carries.
Great, thank you.
So I performed the second reading, so I'd again ask for approval of second reading and adoption of the ordinance.
Make the motion to approve second reading and adopt ordinance 2020-02.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the second reading. Any unknown discussion, deliberation? Roll call, please.
Hoagland,
Yes.
Coos,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Parsons.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Casper.
Yes.
And Hinton.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, then we ask to continue the ordinance, item 6 under J, till February 10th at our council meeting then, and bring
By
that
unanimous consent, then?
by unanimous consent. Is that,
Yes.
yes, everybody's saying yes? All right. We can move on to resolution number 2020-03.
Your Honor, Counsel, this is a resolution to approve the standard form development agreement. Again, the development agreements will vary wildly, but there will be a lot of similarity in the boilerplate. This is to establish the boilerplate. again, for staff will see their proposed changes from the boilerplate in their application. So ask for approval of the resolution for the standard form.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve Resolution 2020-03. Is there a second?
Second.
With a second. Any, all those in, oh, well, it's deliberation? Okay, yes.
I have
Gosh.
one question on page 150. It talks about the owner is an Oregon blank. What, Duck fan? What?
Yes, that's what I intended. No.
Thank you.
Typically, it's an Oregon
Resident?
corporation.
Oh, okay.
Usually, you describe it as an Oregon corporation, a Delaware corporation, or something like
Okay,
that. So,
thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Roll call, please.
Coos?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Parsons?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Casper?
Yes.
Hinton?
Yes.
And Hoagland?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Thank you. Now we'll have Bard Road Sewer Construction Contract Award.
Here I am. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we're here to ask for a construction award. The council approved a creation of a local improvement district on Bard's Road in October 2019, and staff designed the project in-house. It consists of about 370 feet of gravity sewer and 800 feet of low pressure sewer. The let's see, we advertised the bids on December 4th and opened on January 9th. We received 9 bids, which is really a lot. Nice number. And the lowest responsive bidder was Jesse Rodriguez Construction, LLC. Their bid was $143,005. And so you might ask, the engineer's estimate was $192,000. So again, we were in the pack there, but we did get some really nice bids. What we're asking and recommending tonight is that council award the construction contract to Jesse Rodriguez Construction LLC in the amount of $143,005 with a construction contingency of $14,300.50, about 10% of the bid, for a total amount of $157,305.50.
Questions? Mitch, go ahead.
We ever use them for anything else? I just haven't seen the name before.
We
so.
did. They were the low bidder and did nice work on a water project we did near Bell Court and 50th in Northeast. And yeah, they did a really good job on that project.
Awesome. Thank you.
It's good to hear. Great. It's amazing, $100,000 between the low and the high. 100,000.
Yeah.
Engineer's estimate was right in the middle.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Weather must have been good. Any other questions? Because this is the LID, and this transfers into the owners end up paying for this, so it's to their benefit. We heard a lot of testimony on this earlier, so I'm excited that it's such a low bid and performed. So everyone benefits. A motion to
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we award the Bard Road LID Sewer Project construction contract to Jesse Rodriguez Construction LLC in the amount of $143,005 with a construction contingency of $14,300.50, which is 10% of the bid amount for a total amount of $157,305.50.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mark?
Yes.
Parsons?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Casper?
Yes.
Hinton?
Yes.
Hoagland?
Yes.
And Coos?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Stephanie, is there any, the next step is get the work done?
Right, then we come back for the final formation
And that
with the final
when-
number.
Great, that's good to hear. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. All right, we have now Economic Development Toolbox.
Again?
Again, seems like we've heard this already. Welcome.
Mayor and council, yes, you did hear this earlier tonight. It's not deja vu. So some of this will be repetitive because we did just talk about Economic Development Toolbox at the Urban Renewal Agency earlier this evening. But for those of the viewing audience that didn't tune in, and I should say, my name's Allison Robertson. I'm Economic Development and Urban Renewal Director, and I have with me
Jody Mesher, Economic Development Coordinator.
So we're here this evening because there are two toolboxes that we've been directed to create or add tools to. One is with the Urban Renewal Agency, which is, as you know, a separate governmental entity, separate budgets and separate objectives. And then here we are in front of you, City Council, to talk about creating economic development tools on the city budget side. Basically, tonight what we have before you as some objectives for this meeting are to provide you with an update on the economic development tools and the associated program criteria. We're also asking you to create a city loan and grant committee that is basically the same as the Urban Renewal Agency's loan and grant committee that has been in effect since the facade improvement loan was first created by the Urban Renewal Agency, and that was in 1999. We also would ask that you adopt some new city economic development tools and then discuss some questions related to program criteria that we may or may not get all the way through tonight. I also want to apologize that in your staff report in the background section, I mentioned that there's an attached March 25th, 2019 staff report with an in-depth background on past years of development of the toolbox for the Urban Renewal Agency. Jody's got copies of those here for you, so again, sorry I missed that in the attachments. And basically, I just wanted to attach it so that you could see how long we've been working on our toolbox. As I mentioned, the Urban Renewal Agency started this in '99, and then just as of 2009, we decided to add more tools, and the agency did add more tools at that time up until 2014. Most of those tools have been used, but except for, I think, one tool has not been used. That's the business expansion loan. And there are times where we create tools and we don't have any applicants, and there are times where we get proposals from people who say that they're interested in some kind of a partnership and assistance, and then we bring that inquiry to the Urban Renewal Agency, or in this case, if you create some tools this evening, we'd bring it to you via the loan or grant committee to discuss and see if it's something that you want to create a tool for, because there is some kind of a market request for it. So two types of ways that we create tools. So Jody is here. She's with the Rare AmeriCorps program. She's here through July. And as she mentioned, she's Economic Development Coordinator. That is her title. And one of her 4 project objectives is to create the city's economic development toolbox. No small feat. So Jody, do you want to run through the update and then where we're at with these tools?
Yes. So the first thing is we are reformatting existing tools from the Urban Renewal Agency. And we are going to combine, pending City Council approval of the tools, combine them into one document for consistency. And we're also creating one application form for all programs, and then the applicant can specify on the application form which program they're applying for. So phase one of adopting all of these tools is reformatting the existing urban renewal tools and bringing that to City Council to adopt for city economic development funds to be applicable for. Phase two would be to adopt new tools for urban renewal and City Council for the infrastructure partners tool and the pre-development assistance tool. Phase three, we're going to be looking at the residential tools or housing tools, which would be energy efficiency for residential, facade improvement for residential, mixed-use housing, and workforce housing for both urban renewal and city toolbox. And phase four, we're going to be looking at the building rehabilitation grant for both urban renewal and City Council. And then once we get those groups of tools in, we're going to revisit the remaining tools and the timeline for adoption for those before July.
And July is because you're leaving, right?
Yeah, so the goal is to get this done before that.
Now, just as a reminder and for the public at large, these, the phases, phase 2, 3, 4, you've just taken existing toolbox tools and broken them into categories easier to work on and as they kind of progress. So is that, you're not reinventing something or pulling it out? We've given you kind of the big topic and you're putting the meat to the plan.
Correct, yeah. So phase one are all existing tools. They just need to be adopted for City Council. Phase two, the reason we're going to be creating the criteria for infrastructure partners and pre-development assistance is because city economic development funds are only for partnership.
Public property development partners, yeah.
And that's until May 14th. But those would be eligible for those entities before then. So we want that to be available. And then the reason housing tools have been identified as phase three is because City Council has identified housing as one of the goals.
Thank you. So, since we have done this before,
Yes.
and maybe we need to do is if we could take these in order or action necessary, because this includes your application as well, right? And the
Yes.
streamlined application.
Yes, and basically what we're trying to do is create the city toolbox to be equivalent to the urban renewal toolbox so that we have the same tools available whether someone's in or out of the urban renewal area. That we'll worry about the funding part and bring that to you for consideration or discussion, but basically we want to bring the tools online at the same pace so that we have flexibility. If there's somebody who walks in and says, hey, I want to use this tool, but oh, you're not in the urban renewal agency boundary, you know. So that's why we're asking you to adopt these tools specifically so that the tools for the city are the same as the tools for urban renewal.
Great.
So how would you like to?
Well, could we maybe remind anybody that's listening, at the sake of not thinking that this council is not interested, but we really have had this discussion as a previous agency, a meeting that started at 5 o'clock. So maybe they could scroll back and look at the urban renewal meeting where we talked about these tools and had questions and comments, if that would suffice.
Sure, and we're also happy to answer any questions if they want to call the office and talk about tools in general, or we can email them the full toolbox of all the tools in concept, and so that they understand what objectives we're all trying to accomplish with economic development, and then we can just notify them as tools become available and what the criteria might be.
Great. Is there any, yeah, Counselor?
sort of creating call it a framework, or like you say, the concept. There's not necessarily any money for this right now.
That'd be a budget. You've got 75,000 or something in the city one. There is the urban renewal one that's got money in it.
Urban renewal is funded, but
Right.
now we're saying, okay,
Yeah.
these tools have been effective, and people have been using them, and we'd like to go citywide with it, but the dollars.
Right, that'd be at the budget committee, would have to be put into, yep. Good question, though. Any second thought after the other agency meeting, if other questions come up or anything? Okay. So I entertain a motion to approve the proposed application and reformatting of these 4 tools, is it? Oh, Councilor?
I had a question. There
Sure.
got 2 other possible motions in here about the
Yeah, so,
loan committee for the city.
Oh, yeah, I
And
hadn't gotten to that one yet.
Oh, okay.
So just, all I'm thinking of is just
Okay.
these
Sure we weren't skipping.
application and these 4, is it 4 tools?
yes, it's 4 tools. The reason the 5th tool that we have available in Urban Renewal Agency is not included is it's the Downtown Manager tool. And I think we have more discussion that we need to have about Downtown Manager, how to meet the objectives of having a Downtown Manager, what some options are, and then talk about the Bay Area Merchants Association proposal that they submitted to the Urban Renewal Agency earlier this month.
Great. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the application and 4 tools as submitted.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion with a second?
Mr.
Yes.
With minor adjustments? Or
Thank you.
with the, how do I say it?
With the authority for staff to make minor administrative changes as
Yes.
needed.
May I correct?
So
my-
amended.
Please, thank you.
You all right with the
Second
second?
amended.
Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed with a nay? Hearing none. Okay, thank you. So now you want a city loan and grant committee.
Yes.
So, so can I be so bold? I'm going to anyway. Can we trust the loan committee people with data in this committee? I mean, in all seriousness, you know, I find it frustrating to not know the data on loan applicants and stuff. And if we want to limit it to the committee members, fine. But it just, you know, it just seems that we're, as a loan committee member, I'm running on someone else's recommendation, and then I'm the one who gets to take the blame. And I have full faith in who we're using for servicing and everything else. But, I mean, to me, it's no different than executive sessions and, you know, keeping the information, you know, to ourselves. So I don't know if it's a legal issue, if we're just, but I'm open to discussion on this. Counselor?
Well, I'm kind of in that boat and kind of out of that boat because the reason I mean, the name, are you after like information as to the name of the applicant, the name of the business, I'm just seeing if there's something.
Well, let's put, you know, we do the nonprofit grant things, and you have full deal, and that's a grant, you know, and we gave away hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we know who we're giving it to.
And why, and, yeah, okay.
You know, it just seems to me that we've...
Your Honor, I've had this discussion with staff, is there's a specific exemption for loan documents in the public records, and you can have an executive session to discuss confidential records. So if you want the data, unredacted, you can consider it in executive session. You just have to follow that procedure. I think staff's approach has been to redact it so that you can have an open meeting and discuss it. So if you want to go the other way, it's just a function of making that decision.
Good.
I'd support
And it
that.
may or may not be a decision based on if it's a loan or a grant. That would be another way to,
Okay, so as long as we have that capability, because quite honestly, we don't discuss these because we don't know anything. So I would like the ability, so I don't know if somehow when we make a motion to form this committee that has, clarifying, that has the ability to convene in an executive session.
If staff gives you a redacted document that doesn't have any confidential information on it, you can't have an executive session. If staff gives you the records and they stamped confidential and tells you, don't disclose this to anybody, it's confidential, you can have an executive session. So you just have to give direction what you want to do.
yeah, so I would need to know in what cases you want executive session and in what cases you don't. Or I would just always make the assumption it's going to be redacted and public and open session, public meeting, unless you respond, in that meeting that you want to have executive session. It's
Just have a question for our attorney, and then a comment as we go down the road on some other information that I think is important for any loan application. The first one is that as far as the executive session, that could be the loan committee, which is a small group, but then the information that comes to the full city council would then be the redacted information. I'm assuming that's what we're talking about
Yes,
then.
at least that's what I'm having in vision.
If that's the direction the council would go, then the exception would be the redacted one for the loan committee, and then just as a general rule, we would provide you with the unredacted information, and your meetings would be, that committee meetings would be executive sessions all the time.
That's what I would prefer. Yeah, and I think, again, looking at, as a counselor, I have more confidence in my fellow counselors, and we can rotate loan committee folks, as well. So, but always having the redacted come public.
Mr. Mayor, the other bit of information that I think is absolutely critical for the city, not information, but permission as a condition of the loan, is for the city to be able to use the projects after they're done, to be able to say, this is what has been done in the city using
Right.
taxpayer funds. We have spent a lot of money and no one knows about it.
Right.
And the few times where we've had that permission, and I've been able to use it in presentations to the chamber and other things, it has been a huge, huge selling point in both in informing people what can happen and also seeing where the taxpayers fund. I think that, personally, I think that it should just be a condition of the loan that you will allow the city to use that after the work is all done.
Correct. I would agree. It's consensus there.
Yeah.
Getting all that?
Yes.
I was just going to make a motion.
We'll do it. Yep.
Okay. I will motion to accept the current members of the Urban Renewal Agency Loan and Grant Committee. That would be Diane Coos, myself, and Dick Anderson as a city loan grant committee, and we will meet in executive session for these committee meetings. And we can rotate at another time. Let's just.
Yep.
Second.
We have a second from Councilor Parsons. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed with a nay? Hearing none. Thank you. New tools. These are the old tools.
They're new tools for the city, but they're
Oh.
old tools for the agency.
Thank you. I keep getting, okay.
So congratulations. You now have tools. This is exciting.
All right. So we need a motion then to move these 4 tools over to the city, or accept them as a city? Is that what we're,
I think you already approved the 4 tools with the new application.
that's what,
And so I think that that part's done. I think we're moving on, unless anybody has questions, we can move on to discussion.
let's do it.
Okay, great. So these are kind of larger scale questions that we will need you to start thinking about, and, or if you have more information that you would like staff to prepare to bring back to you. I know at the Urban Renewal Agency meeting, Chair Hinton requested that we have a joint council and Urban Renewal Agency work session to talk about economic development tools. It'd be a little bit easier if you get to wear both hats at the same time. So we can talk, as Mr. Chandler mentioned, a little bit more holistically about economic development objectives and how to set up these tools so that they can achieve those objectives. Jody, do you want to pose these questions?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, so these are the same questions that we're posing to the Urban Renewal Agency. But the first one is, would the city provide loan forgiveness and grants? And if so, how much and in what circumstances would council grant that? Will the city increase loan interest rates to accommodate administrative program costs? And looking at potential grant programs, what criteria should city council require for the grant to be approved? You could consider jobs created or retained, if they're local jobs, and if so, how do you define local? The tax increase through redevelopment or significant renovation, at least 50% value, and what wages would those jobs be? And then also considering what incentives you would be looking for grants received or a loan forgiven only at meeting certain threshold of job count, wage level, etc. And also considering there's a new inquiry for assistance with riprap or shoreline stabilization, and could this be considered into any of the existing tools?
So, and part of the reason that we are bringing you these questions now, first of all, they're probably going to take a little bit of time to sort out, and we can make them into smaller chunks, or you know, at the work session whenever that gets scheduled, talk about them in more detail. If there's information that you think about now that you might want us to bring back, we could prepare for that. And then we also have part of the reason why this is such a big chunk is because the Urban Renewal Agency Loan Committee did receive an inquiry from an applicant who knows that we are going to have economic development tools and is curious about using the tools that are available now through Urban Renewal and the ones that are coming down the road, and then how much assistance is too much for one business, and what's the right amount in order to support them. Who are we trying to attract for new businesses, and who do we want to support expansion for existing businesses? Those are really big questions and exciting, but you all will have the tough job of telling us what criteria you want in each tool.
So, I guess, you know, I'm losing. There's been some articles of late in newspapers in Oregon of businesses that, and I'm thinking $1 million, the city gave them $1 million, and they are walking away, and the city's having a tough time figuring out that they got a return or not. And I'm thinking of that's happened in Springfield with, you know, and so speaking out loud, one of the things I would like to see if there's any kind of grabbing of information of who's gone before us, and, you know, what criteria, and kind of the aftermath of things that helped pay back, whether it feel good or jobs or actual cash, revenue, whatever. Because at least I just always hear that the city is left holding the bag. So I got a bias, I guess. I shouldn't say that already about giveaways with a promise. So if I can tie up the promise, I'm comfortable. But maybe it's some kind of performance bond, or I don't know. But there must be information out there, I guess is what I'm saying. So rather than letting us struggle with all this stuff, because, yeah, I sat in that loan committee talking to the people, and it's a tough one to throw out and have us at a wing try to figure out what the payback should be in what form, because it's not always cash, and I recognize that. But I guess I need more help, and if you could steal from somebody else, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
For that work session that we're having together, right?
Yep.
You did agree, did you, Madam Chair? from the Urban Renewal? Oh, okay. Because we, the council, have obviously agreed.
Joint Urban Renewal City Council work session.
We get two different.
Yeah. Other things that would help, councilors, as we got into a work session on this, because, to me, it's always that thing that the citizens are asking us, what have you done? Why aren't you doing more? And, there's never anything attached to it other than you got to do something. And here are the tools. We're talking about the tools, and it's one thing to have them on the table and use, but what are we expecting back in return? And how do we make sure we get that back?
Just kind of thinking out loud thing. I'm a little more interested in rehabilitation of older buildings rather than welcoming new. Although, if a new building replaces an old run-down thing that needs replacement, that's
great. Yeah.
It's okay too. And it just crossed my mind. I was thinking about this design standard concept, which is long-term down the line, but if there was a way to encourage adherence to what we do designs, that might be something we could look at. I don't know.
So you'd be willing to do something if there was a big enough footprint or whatever that kind of set in motion some of our design standards, or something to be a catalyst. Okay.
Yeah, I only because I looked at those design standards and I think, well, how do you actually get a private entity to make a change?
Be the lead on something. Yeah, that's okay. So incentives. Mr. Parsons, thoughts that you might need?
I'd just like to see some data, if we have any, back to your questions, related to, I guess, kind of wages we already have in town, and maybe an idea of employment numbers, I guess, as broke down as possible.
So if somebody was making a promise or wish list of adding employees, at what
Right, we need to have some
range
idea
and where
of
that
what
fits and growth.
is already here.
Okay, that's good. Okay,
I just want to ask again the riprap shoreline, just so we don't forget to check into that. But I really like the idea of some kind of measurement tool, because that really does help us. It helps us talk about it too, saying, well, last year we did this happen because of the dollars made available, and I really like that idea.
so does that need no motion? You've got, we're ready to do a work session when you call it. These guys have all the time in the world and are ready.
Great. We're very excited. Jody's already done a dive into some research on what other communities are doing. So I think, whenever we're able to arrange to have a work session, we can hop to and get some data in front of you. We are also meeting with WorkSource Oregon. I think, is that this week? Thursday. So it's timely to ask about wages and get some more data. I know that they have a wealth of data available, and they're eager to help and to partner You know, we're also, as you mentioned, we're not the experts on jobs, and so we need to partner with all of our other economic development entities so that we can help in leveraging, you know, as much as possible to get everybody's goals met. The last thing I was going to say is there are a few other people who have, I think, would have strong opinions about programming. So, for example, our Small Business Development Center, Business Oregon, as I mentioned, WorkSource Oregon, and there are others that I can't think of at the moment. But Jody and I did send an email to all of those people. The COG, who does our loan servicing, asking about interest rates. What's appropriate? What would we need if we wanted to have an interest rate that would cover those administrative costs so that we don't have what they'd call a leak in the bucket for those costs? And same thing with grants. I mean, when is it the right time? And then we also don't want to create programs where people are really excited to locate here and then they're not able to make it and they leave with the public's money. There are many communities that have encountered that, so we want to be mindful of how to set everybody up for success. So those are great questions and feedback, and we will mull it over and try to turn it back with some useful information so you can make some decisions.
Good. And I don't know, as you mentioned it, even at the work session, I guess I'm not opposed to inviting, if there's some outside sources that would be fruitful, you know, certainly clear it with Mr. Chandler, but limit, you know, no sense limiting our thirst for knowledge and let them share it with us. So,
Thank you.
okay. Anything else? Go forth and be fruitful.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. All right. How about city manager?
Just one item. This was a follow-up from 2 weeks ago. We had a gentleman that had come in and talked about Northwest 8th Court and the traffic problems associated with that. We have started to look at what we can do. The road is definitely narrow. It is complicated by the fact that there are retaining walls that are associated with the hillsides going down that road. The first step that needs to be done in order to determine what or if we can do anything on that is to survey the road itself. So I've given the okay to do that, and that work will be underway shortly.
Well, that's good to hear. Thank you. If I could ask you, because we have a work session for some
Monday, next Monday at 9 a.m.
Well, now, I have one showing on my calendar tomorrow, but at 5:30, so that's off.
There's
Thank
none
you.
tomorrow.
That helps. And that's probably the February 3rd at 9 a.m. priorities.
It is. It will be to work on your next year's priorities. It will be over at the Oregon Coast Community College. We will be providing some light refreshment for you during that time. It's basically going to be broken out into some segments. The first part will be going over just a brief review of the priorities you have that we're working on right now, where we stand. Then we'll review a little bit of the priorities or of the other projects that you've given us throughout the year. We'll also talk about some major capital improvements that are associated with the budget. But then the bulk of it will be more of a free-flowing discussion to determine what priorities you'd like for next year. We have asked if you have some ideas to send them to us. 2 of you have done that. I have been specifically requested not to provide that information to you until the meeting, so there's no predetermined ideas, and the councilors are free to present their discussions as they go forward. So if you do have any ideas you want to make sure it gets put up into the discussion of it, please send those to me.
Great, thank you. City Attorney, nothing? Okay. Oh, City Recorder, go right ahead, Kathy.
I received a message from the Confederated Tribes of Siletz, and they have a new date proposed for their annual meeting, and it's July 13th. So I need to see how that fits with everyone's schedule.
It's just the city council day, right?
Yep, city council day.
Not like we can't do both. We're not held at the same time. Just saying.
I think that's the one they offered
Yeah, they
before, it was the same one.
Okay. Let me check here, hold on a second, I have the wrong email. I'm sorry, it's July 20th.
Ah,
Does that work?
that works.
Monday, July 20th?
What time?
We usually do 5 dinner and 6 meeting.
Yeah.
I don't think
We'd
I'll,
do,
Here.
we'd host it here.
We host it here, yes.
I don't think I'll be here.
Is everybody else in?
Seeably.
Okay. Would be, we know short one at this point, probably, so, but put her down. 7:20. Okay, thank you. Comments? Councilor Hoagland, what do you have?
Again, I was approached by some of the business owners in the Nelscott Strip, and they'd like to look at the parking spaces again. I know I brought it up before, and I forget what was said at that time, but they feel like, you know, their businesses are negatively affected. I know we took away the parallel parking to 101, and they were looking at some of the handicap spaces. They're parallel to the sidewalk as opposed to at an angle like the rest of them, in addition to the parking lot to the south, I think also has that. So they're just trying to see if they can maximize spaces for that, those both, and also the parking lot to the north. So on 32nd and 34th, I think, and the slipstream. So I said, of course, I'll bring that up. And plastic removal. Where are we at with the plastic removal and the styrofoam thing?
Buried on a list.
I know, but where?
Let me send that to you
Okay.
tomorrow. I don't remember off the top of my head.
All right, that's
I'd
great.
give you wrong information if I tried.
Okay, that's fine. And, you know, also the senior center, and I think we did some more carpet, so we did more improvements, and we still don't have an MOU or any kind of anything with the senior center, and that's come up again, that we're letting them have this space. And I know there's a whole lot of sensitivities around the entire thing, but with the expansion of the teen center, you know, the money, you know, I had asked, you know, previously, you know, how much have we given them in total? I don't remember seeing that and having that information and what it would have been and all the contributions that the city has made to this group without having them pay rent. So that's come up again, the difficulties with that.
Councilor Hoagland, you were looking for, if I'm recalling it, trying to get a hypothetical cost per square foot. What their space.
I wanted to know the total square footage that they're occupying.
Right.
Was one. Two, all of the utilities that we pay for them monthly and over the years that they have been there, total cost associated with that as an organization that we have given them both in-kind and direct contributions.
Trying to get a value.
Trying to get
yeah,
right, that we
something.
have done without an MOU. Or any kind of agreement, right? So anything. And then whether or not we want to look at that block that the man had, Mr. Sutton came up and looking at that. If we didn't want to spot zone the one, what about that whole west side of that block on Key? You know, would that be something to rezone that whole strip? You know, there's businesses to the north, the 2 churches and the multifamily. You know, would that be something to zone that whole thing? I don't know if you guys want to, just to talk about it now, if like, is that something that we could do? And, you know, we all didn't want to vote no, but we did. But, so that was another thing.
Well, typically those and I may be wrong, Mr. Chandler can help me, but typically someone on the block would take the leadership.
No, I understand.
So I guess, you know, I'm just saying, I'm not interested in council. If you're asking, is council interested in changing? I'm not. But if somebody wants to take the time to door knock and ask each of their neighbors, you know, then it would be an application, would, you know, and.
Sure. But to bring that up, and then, you know, we were, that's fine for now.
Councilor Mark?
I will pass.
If I can, I thought you did a nice job with Schrader, Congressman Schrader, at the leadership thing. You brought up the child care issue, and I appreciate that because, you know, we talk housing, we talk jobs, and we often forget the child care. And I'm reminded that I don't know if I know the planning director has plenty to do, but at one point I thought that our city ordinances around child care for outside play was more restrictive than the state. In essence, we had to have more, okay, she's shaking her head. So I, you know, much like we looked at ways, barriers for housing, I wanted to make sure we weren't getting in any way ourselves of having someone come in and be wanting to build a child care facility and, you know, we were hand striking them somehow. But thank you for bringing up. So
Thank you for that. Well, that reminds me, somewhat related, and I
thought you already gave up your time.
I did. Now you reminded me. Since we mentioned the Helping Hands presentation on Thursday, and I was struck. I understand these neighbors came forward and they're worried about their children in the neighborhood, and I was remembering that when the Planning Commission gave its approval to the Helping Hands conditional use permit, one of their requirements was that Helping Hands put in a playground because they're going to have children living there. So I think that might help ease some of the neighbors' concerns.
Okay. Councilor Hinton?
Okay, I just have a couple things. One is just a reminder to us that, and I'm sure Kathy will send us a reminder, the League of Oregon City Small City meeting will be here in Lincoln City in this room, and on the agenda is the 2020 census, and it meets the, I don't have the date in front of me, but maybe Kathy does, it meets the third Friday of the month, I think.
For a month?
February. And we provide lunch, and Kathy's on it already, but
Okay.
I also wanted to ask
Where
if, as city manager, if we could invite Ed Drystat to come and give us his visual update. I kind of miss what's going on, and I know he's got a new one for the spring, and it would just be fun to see that.
Okay.
That's it.
Councilor Parsons?
Yeah, okay. It's that time of year again. Family Promise is holding their annual tsunami run. They're looking for teams of 3 to run for 30 minutes on treadmills at the community center. It is basically an adult jogathon. So if you know me, I will be asking you for money. It could be by the mile or a flat fee. It'll be me, Councilor Hoagland, and Director Jeannie Sprague of Parks and Rec as a team again this year. So hopefully we can win that costume contest again.
How far did you guys run?
I believe I'm the defending champion on that.
You may run miles, but we won the basket for our lawn.
I latched onto a really good other pair.
Smart. I think we did like 6 or 8 miles between the 3 of us last year.
The costume was more impressive than the running, was that?
Yeah, we won the costume contest. We were Wonder Women. All 3 of us.
Judy?
I made my costume.
Nope, I have nothing to say.
Nothing? Welcome back.
Thank you.
Diane?
Can't beat Wonder Woman.
Jeez, good. I have, Ron, I wonder, could we ask whomever, I guess typically out of planning, that the city councilors get all public notices that are put out, instead of just getting the ones that, you know, are in our neighborhood or when we're eligible for. That way we know when stuff's out there.
Okay.
Then I'm not surprised at coffees. And I might remind folks some good news. You've probably heard that there's a vocational training with welding program through the community college this Wednesday at 2 p.m. at the Port of Toledo. They're cutting the ribbon on one of the places where the welding education will take place. And then on Friday of this week at 2 p.m. at Taft High School, the welding takes place. So using the old metal shop, wood shop bays, and have turned them into welding facilities to teach welding. And I understand they've got some 22 students in that welding, so this is a big move. So besides nursing, we've got welding, VOTEC, going on through the community college. Ron already talked about the work session. If you're looking for things to do on the 7th of February, 6 p.m. at the casino, the charitable giving ceremony takes place where the tribe gives away its quarterly funds to nonprofits. And this Wednesday is Coffee with the Mayor at 9 a.m., mid-morning, at 60's Cafe. So you're more than welcome to join me for coffee.
On you?
No, not on me. Anything else? All right. Let's call it a night.
Early.
Mics are off.